How did my baby's paternity test reveal that my brother is actually my father? The joke started innocently enough. My husband Derek was cradling our 3-week-old daughter Maya when his brother stopped by with takeout. "She's got the Thornton nose for sure," Derek said, booping her tiny button nose. His brother laughed and said, "More like my nose than yours, bro. You sure you're the father?" Everyone chuckled. Everyone except me. Something about that comment lodged itself in my chest like a splinter I couldn't remove. Derek noticed my face and squeezed my shoulder. "Hey, he's kidding. You know that, right?" I forced a smile. But the seed was planted. Not because I doubted myself. I'd never cheated, never even thought about it. But because once the question existed, it demanded an answer. 2 days later, I ordered a paternity test kit online. The kind they advertise on podcasts, discreet packaging, results in 5 business days. I told myself it was just to silence the intrusive thoughts, to prove what I already knew. Derek found the package before I could hide it. He stood in our kitchen holding the box, his face cycling through confusion, hurt, and something that looked like fear. "Liz, what is this?" His voice cracked on my name. I tried to explain about the intrusive thoughts, the postpartum anxiety my doctor had warned me about, but the words came out wrong. He set the box on the counter and walked to the window, his back to me. "Do the test," he said quietly. "I want you to have peace of mind." The fact that he wasn't angry made it worse somehow. Like he understood I was drowning and was throwing me a rope instead of questioning why I'd jumped in the water. We did the swabs that evening after Maya fell asleep. Derek opened his mouth for the cotton stick without meeting my eyes, and I felt like the worst person alive. I swabbed Maya's cheek while she squirmed and fussed, then sealed everything according to the instructions. The kit went into the mail the next morning. 5 business days felt like 5 years. I threw myself into new motherhood, nursing every 2 hours, changing diapers, singing lullabies at 3 in the morning while Derek snored in our bed. He'd started sleeping harder since Maya was born, could sleep through her crying now, which meant I was up alone most nights. Those quiet hours gave my brain too much space to spiral. What if the test revealed something impossible? What if there was a lab error? What if? The email arrived on a Thursday morning while I was pumping milk in the nursery. My phone buzzed and I saw the subject line. "Your DNA results are ready." My hands shook so badly I had to set down the pump. Derek was at work, wouldn't be home for 6 hours. I could wait. I should wait. I opened the email. The first page was full of legal disclaimers and information about how to read the report. I scrolled past all of it, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Then I saw the number. Probability of paternity. 0%. The room tilted. I read it again. 0%. Excluded as biological father. There had to be a mistake. I'd never been with anyone else. Derek and I had been together for 8 years, married for 4, and I'd never so much as kissed another man since our second date. I called the testing company, my voice shaking so badly the customer service representative asked if I was okay. "There's been an error," I said. "These results are wrong. They have to be wrong." She asked for my case number and put me on hold. Music played for 7 minutes while I paced the nursery, Maya asleep in her bassinet, oblivious. When the woman came back, her voice had that careful professional tone people use when delivering bad news. "Ma'am, I've reviewed your case. The test was processed correctly. However, I do see something unusual in the genetic markers. Your sample shows a close familial match to the child, but not a paternal match. The relationship appears to be avuncular." I didn't know that word. She explained it meant uncle. Derek's DNA suggested he was Maya's uncle, not her father. My vision actually blurred at the edges. "That's impossible," I whispered. His brother and I have never—" She cut me off gently. "I understand this is distressing. Genetic relationships can reveal unexpected family structures. I'd recommend consulting with a genetic counselor." She gave me a number I didn't write down. After I hung up, I sat on the nursery floor and stared at my daughter. She had Derek's dark hair, or what I'd thought was Derek's dark hair. His nose or his family's nose. Nothing about her looked like me except maybe her hands, long fingers like mine. Who was her father if not my husband? The question made my stomach turn because there was no other option. Unless the test was wrong. Unless the samples got mixed up at the lab. Unless something else I couldn't imagine had happened. Derek came home early. Said he'd felt anxious all day and left work at lunch. He found me still on the nursery floor, the test results pulled up on my phone. "What did it say?" he asked from the doorway. I couldn't make my mouth form words. He crossed the room and took my phone, read the screen, and his face went completely white. He sat down next to me heavily, like his legs had stopped working. "I don't understand," he said. "Avuncular? That means uncle?" I nodded. We sat in silence for a long time, both of us staring at Maya sleeping peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling. Finally, Derek said, "My brother. Did you ever—" I cut him off. "Never. Not once. Not ever." He believed me immediately. I could see it in his eyes. "Then how?" he whispered. The answer came to me slowly, like something rising from deep water. "We need to test your parents," I said. Derek's head snapped toward me. "My parents? Why would—" But I watched his brain catch up, watched horror spread across his face. "No," he said. "No, that's not— My dad wouldn't—" I grabbed his hand. Not your dad. We need to test everyone. Your whole family. He pulled away and stood up, started pacing. Liz, you're not making sense. You're saying what exactly? I stood too, kept my voice low so I wouldn't wake the baby. The test says you're related to Maya like an uncle, but you're her father, or you're supposed to be. So either the test is wrong or the relationship between you and me isn't what we think it is. Derek stopped pacing. That's insane. We're not related. We're not cousins or anything. My mom showed me our family tree when we got engaged, remember? We checked. But something was nagging at me, a memory I couldn't quite catch. Your brother, I said. When's his birthday? Derek frowned. June 15th. Why? I pulled out my phone and Googled genetic inheritance patterns, read through articles about familial DNA matches. If you show up as an uncle, but you're supposed to be the father, that means someone else who shares half your DNA is actually the father. That's either your father, your brother, or... I stopped. Derek's face had gone gray. Or what? He whispered. I looked up at him. Or someone else who shares half your DNA. A half-sibling we don't know about. Derek shook his head violently. My parents don't have other kids. It's just me and my brother. My mom would have told me. But his voice wavered on the last sentence. That evening, Derek called his mother and asked her to come over. He didn't explain why, just said it was important. She arrived 20 minutes later, letting herself in with her spare key, carrying a casserole dish because that's what she did when she sensed something wrong. Gloria Thornton was a small woman with perfect posture and hair she got colored every 6 weeks at the same salon. She'd been nothing but kind to me since Derek and I started dating, welcomed me into the family, threw me a beautiful baby shower. She set the casserole on the counter and turned to us with a smile that died when she saw our faces. What's wrong? She asked. Is the baby okay? Derek pulled out a chair for her. Sit down, Mom. We need to ask you something. He explained about the paternity test, about the results showing him as Maya's uncle instead of father. Gloria's face cycled through confusion, shock, and something else I couldn't read. That's absurd, she said. Tests make mistakes all the time. You hear about it on the news. Derek pulled out his phone and showed her the results. The lab says it's accurate. They say I'm related to Maya like an uncle, which means someone else who shares half my DNA is the father. I've never cheated on Liz, and Liz has never cheated on me. He paused. So we need to know if there's someone in our family we don't know about. A half-sibling, maybe. Someone Dad had before you two got married. Gloria's hand started shaking. She gripped the edge of the table. Your father never had other children, she said, but her voice was too high, too tight. I leaned forward. Gloria, please. We're not angry. We just need to understand what's happening. Is there anything about Derek's family history we don't know? She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I should go. You two need to rest. New parents don't need this stress. She was moving toward the door, but Derek blocked her path. Mom, I need you to tell me the truth, right now. Gloria's face crumpled. She aged 10 years in 10 seconds. I can't, she whispered. I promised I would never tell. Derek took his mother's hands. Tell what? Gloria looked at me, then at Maya sleeping in her bouncer, then back at Derek. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Derek, sweetheart, I love you so much. You have to believe that everything we did was to protect you. The story came out in pieces, Gloria stopping every few sentences to cry or catch her breath. When Derek was 17, he'd gotten his girlfriend pregnant. Not the girl he'd dated senior year, the one his parents had approved of, but someone else. A girl named Maria who cleaned their house twice a week. She was 19, from Guatemala, and Derek had been infatuated with her all summer. When Maria told him she was pregnant, Derek told his parents. This part Gloria said while looking at the floor, unable to meet her son's eyes. Derek's father had been furious, not at Derek, but at Maria. He'd accused her of trying to trap his son, of using pregnancy to get citizenship or money or both. Maria had quit cleaning their house immediately. Gloria never saw her again. But Gloria had been watching Derek fall apart with guilt and fear. He'd begged his parents to let him help Maria, to at least make sure she was okay. But his father forbade it. Derek became depressed, stopped eating, stopped going to school. That's when Gloria made a decision that would change everything. She found Maria through a friend, met with her in secret. Maria was 4 months pregnant, showing working 3 jobs to save money. She had no family in the country, no support system. Gloria offered her a deal. Let us adopt the baby when it's born. Maria refused at first, said she wanted to keep her child. But Gloria kept visiting, kept offering help, and eventually wore her down with the promise of a better life for the baby than Maria could provide on her own. Derek was staring at his mother like she'd grown a second head. What are you saying? He whispered. Gloria wiped her eyes with shaking hands. Maria gave birth to a baby girl. We convinced her to let us adopt her, to give her our name. Your father handled all the paperwork, hired lawyers who knew how to make things happen quickly. Maria signed away her rights 3 days after the birth. We told everyone, including Derek, that we'd decided to adopt a baby to give him a sibling. We said we'd gotten her from an agency. We threw a big party when we brought her home. Derek, you were so excited to have a little sister. You held her constantly, helped with feedings, changed diapers. You were the best big brother. She paused, her voice breaking. We named her Elizabeth. We called her Liz. The floor dropped out from under me. My ears started ringing. Derek caught me as my knees buckled, lowered me into a chair. No, I said. No, that's not. I'm not. But pieces were clicking into place like a horrible puzzle. Why I looked nothing like my parents. Why I had no baby pictures before I was 3 months old. Why my birth certificate had been lost multiple times according to my mother. Why when I'd done that ancestry DNA test for fun last year, it had shown no matches to my parents at all, which they'd dismissed as an error. Gloria was sobbing openly now. I'm so sorry, she said. We never thought. You two weren't supposed to meet. Derek went to college in Boston. You stayed here. But then he came back for that job and you were working at the coffee shop and he asked you out. And by the time we realized who you were, you two were already... Derek's voice was hollow, mechanical. You knew? When we started dating, you knew Liz was my biological daughter? Gloria nodded miserably. We thought about telling you. We had so many conversations about it. But you two were so happy and we thought maybe we could just... She broke off. Then you got engaged and we knew we had to say something. But your father said it would ruin your life. He said it was better to let you be happy than to destroy your relationship over something you couldn't change. And biologically, you weren't siblings. You were father and daughter, but you didn't grow up together, didn't know each other as family. We convinced ourselves it wasn't the same as if you'd been raised as siblings. Her voice rose, desperate now. And you were so in love. You'd already signed the lease on your apartment. We didn't want to take that away from you. I was going to be sick. I stood up and ran to the bathroom, made it to the toilet just in time to vomit up everything in my stomach. Derek followed me, held my hair back with one hand while the other shook against my spine. When I was done heaving, I sat on the bathroom floor and started laughing hysterically. I've been sleeping with my father, I said. I married my father. I had a baby with my biological father. Derek slid down the wall next to me, his face completely blank. I have a daughter, he said quietly. I have 2 daughters, you and Maya, except one of my daughters is also my wife. He looked at me. Liz, I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know. I believed him. I could see the horror and disgust and confusion in his eyes that matched what I was feeling. Your parents knew, I said. They let this happen. Gloria was standing in the bathroom doorway, mascara running down her face. What do you want me to say? She asked. That I should have told you on your first date, on your wedding day, when Liz got pregnant? There was never a good time. Derek stood up slowly. How about when I was 17? How about when you knew Maria was pregnant? You could have helped me be a father to my child instead of stealing her and lying for 28 years. Gloria flinched. You were a child yourself. You had your whole life ahead of you. Maria agreed to the adoption. She wanted better for her baby than she could provide. I found my voice. Where is she? Where's my mother? Gloria's face went even paler. She went back to Guatemala 6 months after you were born. We gave her money to start over. I don't know where she is now. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and lawyers and genetic counselors. We had the DNA test repeated at a different lab with full genetic screening. The results confirmed what Gloria had told us. Derek was my biological father, making him simultaneously my husband and my parent. Maya was genetically normal, thank God. The counselor said risks increased with closer relations like siblings or parent-child, but that single generation didn't guarantee problems. Still, she recommended ongoing monitoring. The legal situation was a nightmare. Our marriage was technically void because California law prohibited marriage between lineal ancestors and descendants. We'd been married under false pretenses, but proving that required proving Gloria and her husband had knowingly allowed an illegal marriage to proceed. That opened them up to criminal charges. Derek moved out of our apartment and into a hotel, not because he wanted to leave, but because neither of us could process what we were knowing we shared a bed. I'd nurse Maya and think about how Derek had changed my diapers when I was a baby. I'd look at my wedding photos and feel nauseous. The man holding me in those pictures was my father, the man I'd given my virginity to, who'd proposed on a beach in Mexico, who'd held my hand during labor, was my biological father. We'd committed incest without knowing it, and now we had a daughter together. Our daughter was also my half-sister. Every relationship in my life had become warped and wrong. Gloria kept calling, leaving voicemails about how sorry she was, begging us to understand she'd done what she thought was best. I deleted them without listening past the first few. Derek's father finally called me directly 2 weeks after the truth came out. His voice was gruff, unapologetic. This is your fault, he said. You seduced my son. You came after him deliberately once you found out who you were. I'd been exhausted and depressed, barely holding myself together, but rage gave me sudden clarity. I didn't know anything, I said coldly. You and Gloria stole me from my mother and lied about it for nearly 3 decades. You let your son marry his own daughter. You watched me get pregnant with my father's child and said nothing. So don't you dare blame me for what you did. He started to respond, but I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone. Maya started crying from her crib and I picked her up automatically, her weight familiar and comforting even as my whole world burned down around us. I hired a private investigator to find Maria. It took 3 weeks and cost money I didn't have, but I needed to know my mother. The investigator found her living in Guatemala City, working as a nursing assistant at a hospital. She'd remarried, had 2 sons. When the investigator contacted her and explained the situation, Maria initially refused to talk. But eventually, she agreed to a video call. I set it up on my laptop one evening after putting Maya to bed, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. When Maria's face appeared on screen, I gasped. She had my eyes, my exact eyes, down to the slight asymmetry of the lids. She stared at me for a long moment, tears already sliding down her cheeks. "Bebé," she whispered. "Mi bebé hermosa." I started crying too. "Why did you give me up?" I asked. She explained in broken English mixed with Spanish that Gloria had promised her I would have opportunities Maria couldn't provide: education, safety, a family with resources. "They tell me you will be loved," she said, "that you will have everything." I was 19, cleaning houses, living in one room with 3 other girls. "I thought I was giving you a better life." I asked if she'd known the Thorntons were lying about how they'd gotten me, if she'd known Derek was my father. Maria nodded slowly. "Gloria tell me her son was the father, but she say he was too young, that he couldn't be a father yet. She said, if I kept you, you would have nothing. If I gave you to them, you would have family, money, love." I believed her. Her voice broke. "I thought I was doing the right thing for you. But every day for 28 years I wondered where you were, if you were happy. I wanted to find you, but the papers I signed said I could never contact you." I told her everything then. About meeting Derek, falling in love, getting married, having Maya. About finding out the truth. Maria's face went through the same horror I'd felt. "Dios mío," she whispered. "They let this happen? They knew and said nothing?" She started crying harder, apologizing over and over in Spanish. I told her she hadn't done anything wrong, that she'd been lied to just like Derek and me. The video call lasted 2 hours. Maria showed me pictures of my half-brothers, Diego and Mateo, ages 12 and 15. They looked like me around the eyes, the shape of their faces. She told me about her life in Guatemala, about meeting her husband Luis at the hospital where they both worked, about how she'd told him everything before they got married, about the daughter she'd given up. He'd understood, she said. He'd never pressured her to forget. I asked if I could visit, if she'd want to meet Maya. Maria's face lit up. "Yes," she said. "Please, yes. I want to meet my granddaughter. I want to know you." We set a tentative date for 2 months out, after I could get a passport for Maya. When we hung up, I felt empty and full at the same time. I'd found my mother, but I'd lost everything else. Derek and I met at a park the next day to talk about next steps. We sat on a bench while Maya slept in her stroller, the afternoon sun warm on our faces. "I talked to a lawyer about the marriage," Derek said quietly. "It's void under California law. We can file for annulment, but it's complicated because we have a child together." He paused. "I also talked to a therapist who specializes in situations like this. She said it's not as uncommon as people think. There are other cases of genetic sexual attraction, people who were separated at birth or early childhood and met later without knowing they were related. I'd read about it too during my sleepless nights. How people who share DNA sometimes feel an intense attraction when they meet as adults because their genetic similarity creates familiarity that gets interpreted as chemistry. Doesn't make it less awful," I said. Derek nodded. "No, it doesn't." We sat in silence for a while, watching other families in the park. Normal families who didn't have to deal with this nightmare. "I love you," Derek said finally. "I know that's wrong now, or complicated, or whatever it is, but I can't just turn off 8 years of loving you. You're my wife. You're the mother of my child. The fact that you're also—" He broke off. I don't know how to reconcile those things in my head. I did love him too. Or I had. The problem was separating which feelings were real and which were some kind of genetic confusion. "We can't be together," I said. "Even if we wanted to, it's illegal. And Maya deserves parents who can be honest about their relationship." Derek's jaw tightened. "I'm not abandoning you, either of you. I'll support you both financially. I'll be involved in Maya's life. But you're right, we can't be married anymore." The annulment process took 4 months. During that time, Derek and I worked with counselors to figure out how to co-parent Maya while dealing with our bizarre situation. We couldn't tell people the truth. The social stigma would destroy us and potentially harm Maya when she was older. We agreed to say we'd discovered we were distant cousins after doing DNA tests, and that we'd decided to separate because of it. Close enough to the truth to cover our tracks legally, vague enough that people didn't ask too many questions. My friends thought I was crazy for leaving Derek over something that happened generations ago. His family stopped speaking to both of us except for awkward exchanges when he picked up Maya for visits. Gloria sent a letter apologizing again, offering to pay for therapy, begging us to understand she'd done everything out of love. I burned the letter in my kitchen sink. I took Maya to Guatemala when she was 6 months old. Maria met us at the airport, and the moment she saw her granddaughter, she burst into tears. She held Maya with the kind of reverence people reserve for holy relics, touching her face, her hair, whispering in Spanish. Diego and Mateo were shy at first, but warmed up quickly, teaching Maya Spanish words she was too young to understand. Luis was quiet and kind. giving Maria space to reconnect with the daughter she'd lost while making sure I felt welcomed. We stayed for 2 weeks. Maria took me to the village where she'd grown up, showed me the tiny house where she'd lived before coming to America. She introduced me to my grandmother, an ancient woman who spoke no English, but held my face in her weathered hands and said something in Spanish that made Maria cry. "She says you have your grandfather's eyes," Maria translated. "She's been praying to meet you since the day I told her I'd given you away." On my last night in Guatemala, Maria and I sat on her balcony after everyone else had gone to bed. Mayala was asleep in a portable crib Luis had borrowed from neighbors. The city lights spread below us, and somewhere music was playing from another apartment. "I'm sorry," Maria said, "for everything, for believing Gloria's lies, for not fighting harder to keep you." I took her hand. "You did what you thought was best for me. They're the ones who lied." She squeezed my fingers. "Will you come back? Will you let me know her?" She meant Maya. I nodded. "As much as you want. You're her grandmother. She should know you." Maria smiled, but it was sad. "And Derek, he is—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "He's Maya's father," I said firmly. "That's how we're explaining it to everyone. When she's old enough to understand, we'll tell her the truth. But for now, he's just her dad." Maria nodded slowly. "And to you? What is he to you?" I thought about that. "He's someone I loved who I can't love anymore. He's the father of my child. I stopped. "I don't know what he is. I'm still figuring that out." Back in California, I moved into a smaller apartment I could afford on my salary from the nonprofit where I'd worked before Maya was born. Derek paid child support without being asked, more than the court would have required. He saw Maya 3 times a week, picked her up and dropped her off with the kind of careful politeness strangers use. We didn't talk about anything except Maya's schedule and needs. I started therapy properly, working through the trauma of discovering my entire identity had been a lie. The therapist said I was experiencing a kind of grief, mourning the life I'd thought I had while adjusting to the reality. She helped me understand that Derek and I were both victims of Gloria and her husband's decisions, that the love we'd felt for each other had been real even if the relationship was impossible. When Maya turned 1, we had a small party at my apartment, just me, Derek, and Maria who'd flown in for the week. It was strange and sad, watching the 3 of us, grandmother, daughter, and the father who was also my father, celebrate Maya's first birthday. She smashed her cake with both hands while we sang, completely oblivious to the complicated web of relationships surrounding her. After Maria went back to Guatemala and Derek left for the night, I gave Maya a bath and put her to bed. I stood over her crib for a long time, watching her sleep. She looked like both of us, Derek and me, our daughter and my half-sister, the product of a crime we didn't know we were committing, but also innocent, perfect, loved. I'd protect her from the truth as long as I could, and when the time came to tell her, I'd make sure she understood that none of this was her fault. Derek and I filed a lawsuit against his parents 6 months after Mayala was born. Our lawyer said we had grounds for fraud, emotional distress, and several other claims related to their knowing concealment of my parentage. The case dragged through the courts for 2 years. Gloria and her husband fought us at every turn, their lawyers arguing they'd acted in everyone's best interest, that they couldn't have foreseen Derek and I would meet and fall in love. The judge disagreed. In the final ruling, she called their actions unconscionable and awarded us a significant settlement that included compensation for therapy, legal fees, and emotional damages. More importantly, she ordered them to cover the cost of Mayala's future medical care and education, ensuring our daughter wouldn't suffer financially for what they'd done. The money didn't fix anything, but it meant I could afford the therapy I needed and give Mayala stability. Gloria tried to see Mayala twice after the lawsuit settled. Both times I refused. Derek stopped speaking to his parents entirely, changed his number, blocked them on everything. His brother called once to yell at him for destroying the family, but Derek just hung up. The Thorntons sent birthday cards to Mayala every year that I threw away unopened. As far as I was concerned, she had one grandmother, Maria, who video called twice a week and visited every few months, who was learning English so she could talk to Mayala as she grew. Gloria had lost the right to be a grandmother when she'd chosen to cover up her crime rather than face the consequences. Mayala is 3 now. She has Derek's dark hair and my mother's eyes, a mix of everyone who made her without meaning to. Derek and I are cordial, maybe even friendly on good days. We co-parent effectively, attend her pediatrician appointments together, discuss preschool options. Sometimes I catch him looking at me with an expression I can't read, sadness maybe, or regret for what we lost. I don't love him anymore, not the way I did. That person I loved doesn't exist. He was an illusion built on lies, and when the truth came out, he disappeared. The man who remains is a stranger who shares my DNA, who made the same terrible mistake I did because 2 people decided their comfort was more important than our truth. But he's a good father to Mayala, and that's what matters now. On difficult nights, when Mayala asks why Daddy doesn't live with us, I tell her that sometimes people can't be together even when they love each other. She accepts this with the simplicity of childhood, satisfied with the explanation. One day I'll have to tell her everything. About Maria and the adoption, about Derek and me, about how Gloria's lies created her. I dread that conversation more than anything, but I also know that secrets only grow more destructive the longer they're kept. When she's old enough to understand, I'll tell her the truth, that she was made by people who loved each other without knowing they shouldn't, that she's not a mistake even though the circumstances were wrong, and that sometimes families are more complicated than they appear. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.